for doing that and for CSEA going through this process with us. I know we have a lot more that will be coming your way. We've made a commitment to do every job description that hasn't been looked at since 2010, and that's quite a few. So we're updating those as methodically and as quickly as possible to make sure that we're, keeping, as we talked about, making sure the job duties are where they belong and that the compensation reflects that.
Did you mention compensation study from outside?
We've also begun the discussion with school services to come in and do a comprehensive compensation study for us in classified specifically, because when we do our own comparisons, we see some of our classifications that are pretty comparable, like across our comparative districts, and we see others that are not. Some that are a little bit higher than the average and some that are a little bit lower. And so we really want to be able to come to the table with a comprehensive conversation around each of our classifications to ensure that we're at least working to become comparable with our surrounding districts as a way to retain the great folks that we currently have.
I'm going to take a chance
I think you got it.
and go for all three of these. If you
Yes.
have questions, come see me later. Can I have a motion to approve the three position changes?
So moved.
Second,
Okay.
all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. ELOP and ASES provider.
Oh, it's already here? All right, that would be me once again, so we are receiving ELOP money, as you know, and this is fairly new in the last couple of years that the ELOP money is coming to school districts. The intent is to make sure that all students have an equal opportunity to our after-school programming that is not only an intervention for areas which they need improvement, but also a way for them to have enrichment, and then also, extracurricular, and make sure that they have a place to go and they have time to work on homework, to work on STEM, work on music, whatever it is that we decide as a school district is important for enrichment for after-school programming. Currently we do not offer it at all 5 sites, and so the ELOP money is what the state is asking districts to utilize and implement after-school programming. So we have engaged with 5 different potential providers, and we had 5 different proposals. We looked at the ELOP guidelines and all the documentation from CDE in regards to what we need to do to successfully run an after-school program, and there's some essential components defined on that website and in all of the documentation from ELOP, the CDE and the people that are overseeing and running ELOP. ELOP money is not money that we can opt out of. We have to utilize ELOP money. All the questions and answers on the website say, can we opt out and return the money? The answer has been no every single time. So the intent is that we have to have something that is for students, specifically students that fall under the unduplicated category. And those are the students that need these programs the most. Those are the students that are at the most risk of not having support after school and need enrichment and support from quality people after school. So we had a really difficult time because we had 5 quality companies that put together proposals. And we took those essential components as a team and we looked at a rubric scoring method for how we would choose which provider would suit the needs of our students here in Millbrae. Want to add anything to that?
No, that was great.
The team can definitely jump in as we go because this was a team effort that we looked at all this. So one of the areas was budget, right? And so the provider that we are recommending is ELOP, and the budget, so some highlights from the budget that scored high for us and ranked where they did is the budget was in the awarded grant allotment amount, right? They're leaving 10% of the reserve, of budget reserve for the district members, which means we have 10% of the $1.155 million to infuse our own program and our own supports into that program and to cover any costs we have associated with running the ELOP program for all 5 of our sites. This year, we used ELOP money to infuse teachers into the ASES program because we needed to have some interventions, and the teachers were the best suited to do those interventions for those students because they're with the students on a daily basis, and it created a nice bridge to the after-school program. And so that was a successful implementation that was put forth by the team to make sure that they had the proper interventions after school. And that was an hour of time that the teachers devoted to ASES with their students in small group learning. They either devised specific intervention lessons, or they helped students with what they were struggling with, whether that be homework or other intervention types of activities. So that it was one thing that we did. So we could do that, and we could do other similar types of programs if we think that there's a need within each of the different communities or as a whole, as a district. That leaves some room to do some of that. This was the least expensive pay portion for families. So the amount that they proposed for families was the most affordable for the families within our communities. There's a sliding scale for families, and so these were some of the factors that we used for looking at the budget, right? And then they're also reserving 5% for us to use from our ASES funds as well. So again, we could use that for our costs to run the ASES program. However, we see fit that meets the guidelines for spending the ASES dollars. They're partners with Capital Advisors, and Capital Advisors are a group that follow the budget, they follow these guidelines, and they give good advice to everybody within the school district about future budget, future trends, future recommendations that are going to be coming forth, because they work closely with the governor and his team and all of the people that are putting forth these proposals. And there's a guaranteed district cost will not increase when student numbers fluctuate. So they're coming in and they're saying, it doesn't matter what your student numbers are, we have this agreement. If it increases on your end and it's more cost to us, your cost will not increase as a district. And so that was another important part in looking at the budget for us, knowing that we can budget for that and we won't incur any additional costs moving through the year, no matter what happens with the program. They guarantee that they'll bring personnel in to address any of those needs. Anything with that?
Well, I just think on that last one, the important component about that is that, and as I had the opportunity to chat with our board individually, is that we don't have any benchmark data to give us an indication of how many children will participate this year, whether they're students who are represented under unduplicated or children who would come in on a sliding scale. So that's a huge consideration for the district from a fiduciary standpoint, because they're a company who has guaranteed that if we've got 27 kids across the district, which is, silly, that it wouldn't be any less expensive than if we had 600 kids. So even depending upon whether or not they were full pay or on a sliding scale or unduplicated. And for us being a first year, running out into this, running this across the district, that's a huge consideration for us, because we currently have some data that tells us we have at least 560 families across the district who are interested. Of course, that's interest without knowing specifically how much they may have to pay, or it may be entirely free to them. So that could be a huge adjustment to our cost if we have a lot of students who would be on the lower end of the sliding scale, whose families plan to participate. So that was a big indicator for us. That was a big component for us in considering when we're looking at the budget without having the exact numbers of children who would be participating.
One of the other criteria we looked at was experience in after-school programming. And what that means is they are familiar with the guidelines, the restrictions, and the regulations that come with these dollars that are given to us, and to make sure that we are meeting all of those reporting requirements as well. So their knowledge, their partnership with Capital Advisors, their partnership with other people within the CBO world of the finances of school districts. And they're partnering with over 65 school districts in California, over 600 elementary and middle school partners, and they have 17 years of experience in after-school programming with this type of funding that is restricted funding. So whether that be an ASES program, whether that be an after-school, other type of program, they have 17 years of after-school programming experience on school sites.
Well, I just think it's important that we understand that ELOP hasn't been around for 17 years, so it's not all represented in ELOP. They've been engaged in ELOP funding since its inception, but this is, as Ralph said, is indicative of their experience with ASES programs for many, many years. I just didn't want.
And ASES does have stricter guidelines than ELOP, and they clearly understand the differences with the ASES restrictions, specifically when it comes to the 80% attendance mark versus the ELOP restrictions, and how that 80% attendance is not as strict, or it's not a guideline that defines the attendance for the ELOP program, but it is one that defines the ASES. And there has to be at least a certain percentage of unduplicated students within each of the programs. This is just more about the after experience in the after-school programming. You have well-trained coaches, guaranteed highest level of service, operations, regional managers, site success managers, quality assurance coach. So they have all these different positions that have the experience in working with schools and working with school districts and the regulations that go along with that. After school intercession programming. So this is a sample of what their projections would have been. I think that we have some more information that's going to adjust this a little bit, but 350 students projected was when we first engaged with these discussions, and you can see the unduplicated and non-unduplicated students. The number of schools, 5 site coordinators, 27 coaches, full year of after school, 30 intercession days, and 27,140 coaching hours.
I think, can you just go back to that? That just accentuates the point that there's so many concerns, and there's so many lenses to look at this through. But this is an indication of that budgetary component that's so crucial. So the company was able to project, based on ASES funding and our Title I population and our unduplicated count across the district, the percentage of students who would participate as a UPP student. So that's 140 average is what they're considering. So that really is sort of that number is really not our concern necessarily, because those children participate at no cost. But then there's 210 non-UPP students that they've looked at just sort of statistically across the district, that they would say, we have no idea how much those children would pay. They could potentially be the ones paying $100 a week, or they could be paying a little bit more during the week. And those are the ones that are not concerning, we're excited about it, but where that budget would not, if there were more than 210, all the numbers you see below would increase. So there would be more site coordinators, there would be more coaches, and they would be doing more coaching hours, and the cost, we would pay no more than what we're paying at that proposal.
Parent communication is something, who can do that? Parent communication obviously is really important, right? Communication in general is vitally important. So one of the key pieces was the parent communication with this Bright Wheel app. And, it's a San Francisco-based company. It's two-way communication between the parent and, it's just the next slide. I could have just clicked over. It would be right there. Thanks, guys. So, safety check-in and check-out with personalized parent code, emergency alerts, real-time messaging, keep an open line of communication, right? Direct messaging, centralized communication. And, this is a sample of what Bright Wheel offers, and this is what parents would have access to. Oh, please. Oh, there it is. Is it going? No, it's not going.
Yes.
Is it going? Oh, mine's not going. So with that communication, also to the district, so that type of level of communication and collaboration in between allows them to keep accurate databases and allows them to create reports, so they give us reports that are, they know exactly what we need to submit to the ELOP auditors to make sure that our attendance is accurate, to make sure everything is in place. So Braille is an app that's used by many providers, and it's highly recommended, and a lot of positive feedback we get from companies that do use this, from parents that are utilizing that app with those providers. Yes.
I just want to say on that, that's not our platform. That's their platform, and it's not an added expense to us. So that's what they use to do all their communication, to invoice their parents, to do all of that. So checking in, checking out kids. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't a thought that we were also asking to purchase this.
No, it wouldn't be.
This is their platform.
Included in the proposal, it's included in the cost. Behavior management, so, this is something that was important. They have quality assurance coordinators, provide continuous behavior management and training coaches. They have monthly virtual professional development series. They coach explicitly teach students to develop their own mental and physical well-being. They have SEL-infused physical activities for proactive behavior supports, right? So it's not always reactive, but it's being proactive and making sure they can make the good decisions before they present themselves. And there's data collection on behavioral incidents and behavior report so that we get regularly in communication with not only site principals, but we get that at the district level as well. They have emergency escalation procedures as well, and so they have different personnel that go. And if something escalates, they have personnel that can come in and help address each of those incidents that might end up in escalation, emergency procedure, or it needs communication to us or to the families.
This was a major concern for us because we know that sometimes some of our children who are in the after-school program are some of our children who have some at-risk behaviors. So Christina was integral in really assessing this part of the proposals and had some deep level conversations. So they actually have a pretty sophisticated emergency escalation procedure that involves multiple layers with their team before they involve like the school principal, not exclusive of the school principal, but they are not like, oh, a child has done something that's inappropriate or is acting out, and the immediate response is to go to the principal and say, can you handle this? They have a layer of procedures that they follow before that happens. And then of course, making sure, and we would be determining who would be their contact, whether it would be, if it was a student with special needs, it would likely be Christina or a team member. If it was a student in our gen ed population, it would likely be our school principal. So go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, I also wanted to speak to the behavior incident reports. So they adhere to our state mandates in providing incident reports for all students. But that's really important for me in particular because if there are incidents, I can use report it to the cell phone, and if there's report it to the state. So that was really important as well. So we can collect data, and they utilize it as a way to intervene and support students, but also it keeps us in compliance as
well. So curriculum intervention. So one of the things that they have is a WASC accredited curriculum, and the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, all schools, all public schools have to go through a WASC accreditation process. It's a self-study at a school level. I've been on several teams, Superintendent French, Jeff, there have been several of our team members that have been on WASC accreditations. It's not an easy process to go through. And so to get WASC accredited is something that is relevant in today's curriculum. So the WASC accreditation process is not an easy one, and it is relevant to today's teaching and learning. And so That was something else that scored high for us, is being able to have that type of curriculum that is approved and state approved and alignment with curriculum throughout other school districts throughout the state. Do you want to jump in? No? Good. This is where it was, they're supporting all students, so objectives to provide comprehensive support to all students, ensuring that each one feels included in our program. In the case of students, this is where Christina was talking about, so this is the slide that she was referring to when she was speaking.
Yeah, and it does sort of speak back to the multi-layers of support. We have to remember that these programs are going to run until 6 o'clock at night, and so that doesn't leave a lot of support on the sites, right? Our behavior supervisors gone by 4:30, our BCBA will be gone by 4:30. So we need a program that can support all students all the way until the end of the program, right? So with all of the multi-layers and having the experience with other districts, speaking with them, they had multiple models to pull from. So I was able to give them some sort of complex problems. And they did have, well, oh, this district kind of does this. And oh, there's a district we work with in Northern California that does that. So they offer a lot of solutions to problems in order to support students all the way to 6 o'clock at night. Because that is a concern, is making sure that we have a program that can do just that. Because we don't have the capacity to keep people here till 6 o'clock at night to support the after school programs. So they need to be able to do that in-house. And they had a lot to offer, so I thought that was a really great, just their background and their knowledge and how many different districts they work with. I think that they could come up with some really good solutions to unforeseen, little hiccups.
Sorry, our slides are a bit out of order. This is more information about the loss accreditation. You say when they got loss credit, it's a 6-year ongoing cycle, and it just gives more information about the loss process. Another important factor in not only during the day, but after school is consistent staffing and making sure that you have the same people and enough people and the appropriate people that are serving the students on a regular basis. So you see a specific team of people who are dedicated 24/7, calling everyone of the leads generated. This is their recruitment process. So this is how they recruit. So they have a whole team of recruitment. So it has 70-person recruitment team. And this is how they go about getting personnel for their programs. You can see it's a pretty intensive process with phone screening, virtual interview, in-person interview, field training, onboarding. And so they have people in all of these areas. Total of 70 just for the purpose of recruitment and retention of staff for their after-school programs. They overstaff all programs with floater coaches to ensure there is never any absences. So they're taking into account somebody may be sick one day, so there's someone that can fill in that can go to that. And those floater coaches go from site to site on a regular basis to familiarize themselves with each of the sites. And then when someone is absent, they can fill in easily when there's an absence. This is their organizational structure. So you can see the amount of personnel that are included here, from operations manager out to a program manager, a training manager, quality assurance manager, regional manager, site success manager, all stem out from the operations. And then you have regional managers who site coordinators report to. And then you have attendance coordinators, people specifically dedicated to the attendance. And that's important that we have this layer of teams that have specific responsibilities for each of these duties.
Well, the attendance coordinator is essential for ASES because of the attendance requirements for ASES and the administrative work that comes with that.
Right. And all of this is included in the program quote, and it's dependent on the needs of the district. So they are flexible, and then they can pivot and they can bring in people as needed depending on what the specific needs are for that district at that time. These are the job descriptions of the various people we just talked about. And you can see each of them described there. I don't know if I need to read through all of those, but there's specific job descriptions and detailed job descriptions for each of those jobs that were listed on the previous page. Sample reporting and data. So this is the type of stuff that we will be receiving if this is the selection we go with. So obviously I have 444 students at 8 schools and asked them 2 types of questions. So this is the type of survey and questions and data that they collect and receive. They're also open to us asking specific questions. So their surveys are not just canned with what they have. They're very open in saying that if we have specific information we want to get from our communities, they will incorporate those questions in our surveys to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students and our community. This is another sample of the reporting, and this is student well-being, and so you can see some of the questions asked here. Eating healthy foods, are they active, interested in daily activities, sleeping enough, in a good mood, feeling cared for. So these are the questions that they ask. Again, these are samples. We can tailor these questions for our purposes, for what we need and the needs of the community. And the last is just an endorsement from Jack O'Connell. LEVO is the perfect ELO full-service provider. They have a rare and credible experience delivering high-quality programs that complement the school day for over 17 years. And that is the conclusion.
Questions, comments?
I'll start. Thank you for all the work. I mean, we had the same presentation at
This was huge. I mean, this was a lot longer than the first one.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah. The ELOP money is new and it's the first year. And when we had the first 2 presentations, Edmo and Oliva, and it was fine. But my opinion, when we had Happy Hall interested in the after school program, didn't know that was that thing. And when we heard the presentation, it just, to me, it was a no-brainer. They're already on site, they're ready to work with our kids, they already know our community, they've already been in Millbrae for 60 years. And so to me, this is a great company, and they're based from San Diego, and they have a lot of good stuff. But really, at the end of the day, it's the people that work with our kids, have known our kids for years, will be able to handle our kids a little bit more. They know our community. So I'm conflicted because I do like this program, they're great, but they're not local. And local always works best for our children, and we have that. And this is talk about equity because they're already at Spring Valley, they're already at Meadows, they're already at Green Hills. And when we talk about equity, this is an opportunity that we can bring Happy Hall to Bonita Park and have equity at all of our schools. And I think it's a great opportunity for Bonita Park, and it will be sad for them not to have that same opportunity to experience. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, this is, very impressive. I mean, it's huge and it's very corporate and it's very, it's all over the place. And I'm not disputing the fact that, in a large district, this would be the company that would just take over all the schools in the whole district. We're Millbrae, and we're a very small community, and we have some history with other childcare providers. Happy Hall being one. Edmo, that's even more local than this one is, although when we had the presentations, we didn't have a budget proposal, any kind of a proposal from Happy Hall, I don't think. Not that I saw. We had one from Alevo, which I think is in here, and then we had one from Edmo. But when I look at the total picture, there's nothing that says this isn't a wonderful program. I just feel as though there is a personal touch a caring, nurturing. Our kids all over, I'm thinking of ASES, of course. Sure, they need the academic piece and everything, but they need to make connections with people. And I think the connections that Happy Hall would provide is just so rich and so close that I want those students to have that. Obviously, you know, there are different components of ELOP. There's different components of ASES. I know it takes, you know, a lot of reporting, you know, that whole, we've got a great number of people helping to bring that program through, but I don't have any doubts that we couldn't get that from a more local provider. That's just my opinion.
Right. Well, this is really confusing. It really is, because these are a couple of really good organizations that want to be affiliated with the Millbrae School District. So it's really a tough call. That was a great presentation, but we had other presentations before that were just as good. So I'd like to get more information. Karen?
ELOP is a very sort of established company. It feels very corporate. And it's no doubt that they have a lot of systems and things in place, which I think is great. At the end of the day, I agree with Trustee Musa though, that it's very much of a people business more than anything else. And the systems are something you need to have, but what is most important are the people in the teaching parts, right? Like, we can have the best systems and process for our school district, but it's really the experience of our teachers, right? And that's what drives what we do, and it's experience of people. We have Happy Hall that's already experienced at 3 different school sites. I would feel uncomfortable upsetting the apple cart for those schools with a startup, establishing new relationships. It takes a while to build those, and it feels like a startup. I actually have no idea how it would work with 2 different school sites, 2 different providers on the campus. I think we would be cannibalizing both of those and making neither very, very successful. I'm not sure how we would have the amount of facilities to have. I mean, it was very confusing to have CAM and La Garza, and we probably have some after-school sports with our rec centers. That's a lot to juggle. I think it would be confusing for parents to be able to decide how do the kids interact on the playground when they're out there. You've got the ELOP kids and the Happy Hall kids, and are they able to, and I just think that to me is a question that's not fully understood, in my opinion. My preference would be not to upset any apple carts with what exists at 3 of our school sites. And to the extent that there's the experience of what Happy Hall may have that could be transferred to another school, like I don't know if that's something that was in consideration. I think they did talk about that, of just putting in, you know, some of the experienced people. They have so many staff from all of the different school sites, plus their facility in San Bruno, that I've seen them rotate staff, that I just could imagine that it would be a smoother transition to apply that to some of the other sites. So I think, you know, ELOP by this presentation looks great, but it is a startup. To find all brand new people, you know, that's a learning curve. It's a learning curve to get to know the community, to get to know the people, to find the people. If you don't have one person that's sort of been grounded and experienced here, everybody's learning at the same time. The person who's supposed to be the trainer is still learning. What am I supposed to train, right? And we've had instances with some of our other providers that we're literally bringing people on board, and, you know, the turnover was great and the training was nil. Like nil. And I know this because there are people I know who actually were part of that were hired. They were literally thrown in the room, and I just feel like that's tough when you have every single person new. So I don't know, that would be a concern. I think, like Frank said, I would need further sort of consideration of how it would all work, especially at the school sites where we have Happy Hall in existence. I just don't even know how that would work, or if there's a possibility of splitting, where Elbow takes Taylor and Lomita Park, and Happy Hall remains at the other school sites, and also how does that sort of work with equity? Would the other company want that? Those are just questions that I sort of have.
Well, my question is around capacity. Does this company provide 99% of what we need to be in compliance and to meet the needs of the children and to meet the needs of budget? And I agree with what we said here tonight about having community partnerships that go back a long time. But I think we have to keep looking forward to what has to happen next year, the year after. I'm always concerned about the amount of reporting that has to be done, the financing that is related to the reporting. And it just seems to me, in this case, a systematic approach would be beneficial. And I'm assuming that when you evaluated these providers, that you took a look at those standards, besides the staffing and the other things that we saw on the slides, which I want to support the group that's going to carry us into the next couple years and not have to backtrack and find other sources of getting information and reporting information. Yes, they're corporate, but it doesn't mean that they're bad. It means to me that they have experience. And there's a learning curve to this stuff because it changes every year. Look at the budget process. So, I'm depending on staff to tell us what they think is going to bring us into the next couple of years. Because it's going to be hard to change once we make a switch. So it's kind of my thought.
Is there a question in there or a thought?
Just a thought.
Okay, then I won't say anything.
So we need to vote on this, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Question. So who are the providers in the other school district, in the other schools? Happy Halls, who else is there?
We don't have any other, and we have,
Other schools, our other schools.
at Lomita, we have the Garza providing our ASES, and then Cam doing the ELOP.
Okay,
And at Taylor, we have Cam doing the ELOP. And then Happy Hall is at our other three sites, providing their.
It's a private entity, it's not,
They're not a-
it's not a
they're not-
school
they're
based,
not-
it's not school sponsored, it's separate from school. So ELOP and ASES are school based, where Happy Hall is not currently.
We don't oversee Happy Hall's current program, we simply lease them the property. So it's not an after-school program that's tied to the school district.
So can you tell us in 2 sentences why the reason that you recommend this particular provider?
That 2 sentences is not a lot, I just used.
3, I'll give you
them.
3.
That was not Elevo's presentation, that was ours.
Yeah.
So that was looking at all of the rubricing items that we talked about. We definitively brought them out. Staffing, experience, budget. Data was a big component for us, how they report student satisfaction, teacher satisfaction. We only gave you snippets, principal satisfaction. The parent communication piece was very large in the consideration that they are constantly engaged with the parent community, absent the school site. So if right now at Lomita Park as an example, we have to have our teachers communicating with our parents oftentimes about what's happening in the ASES program because there has not been a mechanism in place for our current provider to be able to do that. And that's as you know, we've hired a lot of our teachers to support that program. So, and it's not, and it's Happy Hall's in the room, and we appreciate our partnership with Happy Hall and the work that they do at our 3 sites. We're looking at it from the perspective of we've engaged with folks who started this work this year, and while they're great local partners and they provide great services in our school district, La Garza provides incredible service to our children during PE. Cam does an incredible job with camps. We didn't see that transference of ability in the ASES and the ELOP programs. And to, I think it was Karen's point, I don't remember who made the point, but that may look different in 3 or 4 years, right? Like depending upon their experience, they're new. One of our major concerns is our own personal staffing at the district level and at the school site levels, and the impact on our teachers already and the impact on our principals, and really the lack of ability to be able to help support those programs. We understand that first and foremost, relationships are the most important thing, but systemic operation, when we're talking about dollars that are not general fund dollars, we don't have flexibility in this. We don't have flexibility in reporting. We don't have flexibility in attendance. So there has to be a seamless ability to be able to do that. And those were all of the contingencies that we looked at. We didn't, we of course evaluated some of the proposals that we had community relationships with. That's hugely important. We don't want to downplay the importance of that. We're looking at it holistically, and of course, as fiduciaries, the fiduciary steward of the district, I'm looking at it from a budget perspective. The fact that we could potentially have 500 children who want to access this, and I know that we won't have to say no to any kids because we won't have a price change, is huge. We won't have to turn any kids away because we can't afford to pick up the additional pieces of the budget because we just didn't have the other commitment from our other providers on the budget component, and that's big. That's something that we have to look at, and it is a business component of the work, but it's a crucial component of that work so that we're not turning children away who want to participate. I mean, we estimate that we would have almost full participation at Alameda Park in our ELOP and ASES programs, which would be combined. So there wouldn't be 2 programs running at Alameda Park. It would be an ASES and ELOP together, but because there's an unduplicated requirement in ELOP, there wouldn't be a differentiation like there currently is at Alameda Park.
Except for, isn't with ASES and ELOP, the requirements for attendance different? So with ASES, you need to attend for 5 days, and if they don't, they basically lose their spot, right? But with ELOP, it's a little more flexible. So like, are the kids that would be tagged for ASES and kids that would be tagged for ELOP to allow for that flexibility?
So yes and no. With ASES, yes, definitely. The requirements given it's a grant are much more strict than those dollars that aren't necessarily identified as a grant. However, there are attendance requirements for our unduplicated students in both those programs. Where we don't have attendance requirements in ELOP are for children who are not identified as unduplicated. So it still requires extensive attendance reporting in order to remain compliant with ELOP or ASES.
And now, how did La Garza do with their reporting by mid-year, like their attendance reporting?
They didn't. And
So who did the attendance?
It was a struggle to meet the auditor's requirements for attendance at ASES this last year.
I think Karen, you mentioned about the difference in the ELOP attendance versus ASES. And I think we did run into some issues with that when CAM came in and they were, quote, the ELOP piece. And then La Garza came in and they were the ASES piece. So there was a little bit, and I think I think the staff was really concerned about that at one time, because it was like, no one knew which kids were going where. So I think there is a concern about that, or there was.
There may have been, I mean, there was more than that as a concern, quite honestly. So that would be like, on the list of concerns, I'm not sure that even would make it. From our perspective, just in the managerial and the leadership component of that. But in this format, it would look very different next year, because those programs would not be differentiated. And remember, ELOP, this goes back to the budget, right? The reason for the express need to get ELOP in there was because we were told, you either use these funds or you lose them. And so we were being fiduciary, we were doing everything we could to find a provider to be able to help us not lose those funds, which we were required to spend. And so, no disrespect in any way to LaGarza or Pam, we knew at that point, and kind of said it in our presentation, that it wasn't ideal to have two providers at a school site providing two very different programs. But the attendance component of it was not our major concern. The auditing part of both of those programs is extremely important. And in ASES, it's important because any child that attends ASES is a child who's identified as unduplicated. In ELOP, that same reporting requirement exists for our unduplicated children, because there's a percentage of each program where unduplicated students must attend. So you have to have a percentage at each program in order to be eligible for the continued money.
Space, capacity. It doesn't matter who runs the program, whether you have 300, 400, it doesn't matter who you hire. You're gonna have an issue. You have Happy Hall at 3 schools. They have their students, they have their kids that they go there. And then you're gonna have another company that comes in. So I feel like there's gonna be a challenge. So if you have Happy Hall plus 100 other kids, where do you place all these kids? You have an existing space that they already have it. Where do you create more space for all these other kids with another company? It's just conflict of interest for the kids. It just makes it, for the kids when they go, it's complex. So I think we just need to simplify it for our families and our kids. So there isn't that, like Lamita Park, we had LaGarza and we had Camet. It was just, I think it was conflicted. It was just too much. So, and I think we just need to simplify it.
And I think the ELOP portion of the assistance to Lamita Park last year was not just the fact that we had this money that we had to use. It was about adding to the program that wasn't meeting the needs of those students academically, socially, any of those. So that was the reason teachers were brought in to Lamita Park ASES.
No. We brought in the teachers for ASES long before the ELOP. So ELOP,
But that was part of the money, and then we brought in CAM, and then we brought in. But I think, just from my viewpoint, it was not just about using these funds. It was about, adding to the program where it was lacking at Lamita Park.
we were adding to the ASES program, not the ELOP program. And
Through ELOP funds, though. We were using ELOP funds to do that.
Yes, that's
yes,
correct.
that is correct, because at that point, we were not under the gun to, and if we would have been able to have, sorry, Kathy, you don't have to say anything, just saying, I'm using Kathy because she's here and she's a teacher at Lamita Park. And when we met with Lamita Park staff and we said we're using ELOP money to basically supplant the ASES grant, and any teacher who wants to participate, we would be paying you at this rate of pay. And understandably, these teachers had already worked a full day, and not every teacher's like, yeah, I'm up for working until 6 o'clock at night. But we did have some teachers who said, I'll work an hour a day, some who said I'll sub, some who said I'll work 3 days a week, or whatever the case may be. That was specifically to support the ASES program. That's when Terry and I went in and worked with the current ASES provider to completely revamp their program. And then we had to work with extra personnel, including not only our teachers, but our paraprofessionals, as well as administrators, to be able to support that program to see it to fruition. And then ELOP came in, and not ELOP, we were using ELOP dollars, but then there was the push to say, these dollars have to be expended. And there was no way we didn't have teachers, and this is in no way, I don't know a way to say this that doesn't sound derogatory, I don't mean it that way. We didn't have enough teachers who were interested in doing that work after school every day, understandably, until 6 o'clock at night, where we could spend that money on our own people. Had we been able to take that $400,000 and say, hey, we want to pay our teachers to run this program at Taylor and at Lamita Park, we would have done that. We just didn't have the amount of people that could do that because they work all day.
I mean, we can talk about this all night, it's 11 o'clock. Happy Hall's here. Before I approve this, anything, I would like to invite Happy Hall back and to kind of fill in, because when they did the presentation, we didn't talk about ASES and stuff. Well, I would like to bring them back and kind of answer questions that we have for them in terms of a legal, the other company versus what they can do. And I just like to get more information about what Happy Hall can and cannot do, if they're able to accommodate and meet the same requirements as them, and the issues that you dealt with, discipline and support, all this stuff. I would like to hear it from Happy Hall to see if they're capable or not. And if not, they'll tell us. And if they do, then it's something for us to reconsider. So, but we can just talk about this forever, but I think we just need to bring back Happy Hall and let us know an honest conversation about what their, more detail of what they're able to provide. That would be my recommendation.
I think we have to vote for it at some point.
Well, you can vote, but.
Well, we can have a motion to table. Can we table this?
Are you talking, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can
You
we
were right after you,
table,
and I didn't.
Can he take a motion to
since
table?
they want more information?
Sure, you can certainly table it. I will just kind of warn the board that we're running into some territory with time.
Okay.
So certainly you can table it, you can bring it back.
If we bring it back at the end of June, is that too late?
It's late, but if that's what you want to do. I don't know, I would have to check though.
When would this take effect? In the fall, right? September,
Or
August.
Yeah, but there's a lot of planning that needs to be done.
I know.
It's June, we need a lot of lead time. I would actually have to check with legal counsel because if you table it, I may have to go back out.
Take a vote.
I don't know, we may have to go back out for that.
I'd rather take a vote.
Okay. So the consensus is to take a vote.
I thought it was a table.
Now, may I have a motion to approve this recommendation? Seeing none, motion doesn't carry. Okay,
So is it table?
No, it died, so we'll have to we'll start the process over.
But I would love to see how we will come back and just answer some of the questions, cover the issues that we dealt with and see, compare legal to what they have. And again, we'll have an honest conversation. If the Happy Hall can't accommodate and give us the same resources, then we can, have a different discussion then.
all right.
I mean, my only other last comment is otherwise we can look at a situation in which we keep Happy Hall at its existence and then we look at a separate provider that just deals with Lomita, like look at what would be the best provider for Lomita and Taylor and perhaps all the additional unduplicated students that are qualified at the other school sites, but not having two competitive, providers at a site, because I think that is very confusing from a capacity, parents, et cetera. I sort of had envisioned that, there would be some transportation that could take some of the other unduplicated students and combine them with what might be happening at Taylor and Lomita. And that would be one way of basically offering that service to the other students. but basically not really touching what already exists at Happy Hall, or just incorporating all of those students right into the existing provider. That would be my final 2 cents in terms of like how I kind of am thinking about this.
And I would just speak to the transportation part, and in my mind, transportation, we don't have a transportation.
I know.
So that's a difficult challenge to overcome, is to get transportation from one site to another for an after-school program. And in my mind, it's not equitable that this school over here has students that have to be transported to this school over here to attend an after-school program. So transportation in our mind was not an equitable solution to an after-school program. Regardless of who the providers are, we didn't feel transportation was feasible or equitable for families within our district.
And virtually, there's 2 purposes for that. Not equity aside, it's transportation dollars would actually have to come out of the ELOP dollars, so it then takes away from service providing for children. But ultimately, you would only be transporting your unduplicated kids,
Right.
which feels really ugly. Like, you need to get on a bus and go to this school.
It's like segregation.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel in any way the way we would want kids to be like, well, why can't I stay here? You have to get on a bus and go here for the kids who are unduplicated.
That's fair.
Okay, to be continued. Future agenda items, anything else? This is one.
Demographic study, safety.
We do need to find a time to meet with the board about the demographic study and the comprehensive safety plan, in a study session, a non-recorded study session for the purposes of the district safety and giving all the details about safety, so.
Yeah, I think we need to send out a calendar availability for a couple things. Coming up in June, so.
Yeah. I think we had something else we talked about too. Yeah. Closed session. Didn't we talk about getting together?
You're welcome.
Evaluation.
No.
I think I have to check with him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. See if she is,
But we did have a date, right?
We still need a motion to adjourn.
We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
All those in favor, that
I don't need to be sure.
Oh,
No.